I mean, there was more than one occasion where people would ask me who I was on the set, and I would tell them I was a writer. And you could, like, one person visibly started, and you could see it in their eyes that they were like, wait, this dude's the writer? Because they don't see that many writers of color. They don't understand that we could be the writers on a show like this.
Yeah.
It's just not done. So it's just
like,
what was done with this show is just not.
Anthony's already here. Why
done.
do they need more Black people?
I remember I was in line for a coffee, and someone came up and goes, "You must be hair and makeup." And I was like, why must I be hair and makeup?
I am never letting you grocery shop alone again. Did you even get anything on the list?
That was the list.
Oh.
I'm kidding. I put it all away. Good morning, Amelia.
Hey, how'd you sleep?
One last dance rehearsal this morning, and then tomorrow, the big show.
Oh, wait. We all have to go to that, right?
Try again.
We all get to go to that, right?
Much better.
Anthony, do you want to walk me through who everybody is then?
Yeah, certainly. So we have Amanda Joy, who is one of the writers on the show. We have Ian Stamen, another writer on the show. Mary Peters, writer. And then we have one of our directors here, Alicia K. Harris.
All right. So then, so to introduce that, I guess the big thing we're talking about is how you guys did a 180 on this show, right? Obviously, so I already had a conversation with Anthony where he kind of walked me through this, but now walk me through the situation where, this show had a different showrunner. This show had some scripts that needed to be, I guess, we'll flip them. Well, let's use some real estate terminology or tear the shit down and flip it. The opposite of gentrified. I don't know. But you guys had to. What Anthony filled me in on before was, people didn't want to touch some of these screenplays. Is that correct, or how's that work? Specifically Black directors, specifically and then the producers acted after Sharon Lewis gave them some notes about everything that was wrong. Is that anything else we should fill in terms of the gaps there, or?
Yeah, that's accurate. They had access to a couple of other really good Black directors that refused to sign on because the scripts weren't where they thought they should be tonally. And they realized they needed to make a change, and I guess thankfully for the show they did.
When I got word that things were actually going to be moving forward and that I'd be able to go along on the ride, and once I found out that Anthony was going to be taking over and everything that I'd heard about him up until that point, I was like, yeah, totally, I'm totally in. No questions asked, right? And then from there, it was just like a complete 180, I went from being literally the only Black person and the only woman in the writer's room to now being one of, how many women were there? 4, 5?
Yeah, there's 4 women, 2 men. Because including Sadia and Jay, who are both writers on the show. They're not here, but yeah, they're both women.
So you were the only, you said the only woman and the only Black
person of color,
was the only person of color. So it was all white men.
Yes.
See, Anthony, you said it was more. You dressed it up a litlittle nicer than that.
Well, there were other writers before that last iteration that were part of it, but they didn't come back because basically what had happened was they were trying to get greenlit. They're trying to get more episodes done. They wrote a bunch of episodes, and then they basically got rid of all the writers that they had already written episodes, and Frank had brought back the main people he wanted.
And some people had moved on to other things as well. So yeah.
And that included Murray. So then basically that summer they were working on just kind of, they're supposed to be cleaning up the scripts before they started production. They were going to start shooting in October.
Right.
That was the plan from what I had heard.
Well, so then Mary, what was your experience specifically with the material, with the content, with being the only person in that writer's room? If whatever you're comfortable speaking to, by the way. Don't twist your arm.
It's sort of, that experience of being the only person of whatever your kind of, for lack of a better word, box is, I guess, right? And feeling that you kind of need to speak to everything and address everything and try to, be that voice where it's like, even within the realm of like Black women, of, you know, around my age, it's like there's a huge gamut of experiences, right? And opinions and everything that like one person can't ever, you know, carry all of that. Um, and also it's hard, like you can't catch everything is the other thing, right? And like as much as you might try to as well, as sort of like, you know, the most junior person on the staff, it was like it's not up to me at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
There comes a point where it's like you're just kind of following marching orders, right?
When you saw the original scripts, what are the things that made you like be like, holy fuck? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we tearing down? Like, what is the stuff that you were reacting to that this got to go?
Okay, so I'll say this, having been the first new person out of like between Amanda, Ian, and myself to read scripts before I decided whether or not I would take this job and overhaul these scripts. I just remember thinking to myself, reading scripts, kind of being like, a lot of times going like, no, what, why? I have in my notes a lot of like WTF and like never and who did this. Like I have a lot of questions. There's a lot of those notes, and like, and we yeah, it's just very clear that the point of view, there was no one that was protecting the Black characters in the show. That's just what it felt like. It just felt like they were just kind of like, oh, and this is how everyone is, and so we'll just do that. And it just felt like they were. I was mad, I guess, is the way I felt after reading a lot of those scripts. I don't know, how did you guys feel? I know you guys had similar experiences, but I don't want to speak for you guys reading the scripts.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of echo what Anthony just said. When I read the scripts, I mean, obviously, he kind of appraised me of what the premise was going to be about, a blended interracial family. So essentially, like a modern day version of the Brady Bunch, but interracial. But then you'd read the scripts, and there wasn't kind of any kind of cultural grounding to what you were reading. Like these could have been anybody. They didn't have to be a Black family. They didn't have to be from England. The storylines were, to be frank, were a little bit generic, and it just didn't seem like, yeah, people had taken the care to think about what the premises they were writing around and what that would mean for the experiences and the stories that you'd want to tell around that premise.
I think it's doubly upsetting because not only are we reading these scripts where there's, you know, things that are, as Anthony said, you just notice like WTF, and there are things that don't feel grounded in that don't feel grounded in the BIPOC experience. And then you have this extra question, which is why are BIPOC stories being told by people who don't know how to tell them, or who don't have that experience, that life experience? Why are they the ones given ownership of BIPOC stories and permission to tell them? And why are their voices the ones that are being highlighted in stories that are from other communities?
First episode had the young Black woman, Amelia Parker. She is looking for makeup for her. She's looking for makeup for her dance recital. Her mom, who's passed, she normally asks because her mom was Black. Her stepmom is white. She's afraid to ask her. She steals her makeup. She basically does whiteface with her mom's makeup. Then puts a bunch of stuff.
Oh, like White Woman Foundation? And,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She basically like takes her white mom's makeup and puts that all over her face, then feels terrible about it, can't get it off because it's like makeup that doesn't come off with soap for some reason. And then then she covers her face with like jackets and stuff like that. And then in order to get out of her dance recital, she pulls a fire alarm in a mall and then runs out of the thing. So already I'm kind of like, I don't know what little Black girl's pulling fire alarms trying to get the police to come after them.
Right.
I don't know who's wearing white makeup, and then covering their face and running around. It was a lot of stuff to me. I was kind of like, this is a little bit ridiculous. And then for me, there are other things like, another specific, there was, I think out of the 20 scripts, there was one Asian character, and she worked at the nail salon in the mall, and she had one angry line.
This was my first like half-hour TV show.
Right.
So, and this is all news to me. I didn't even know this was the whole backstory. So I've just been sitting here like,
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, we kept it pretty tight. Like the writers, a lot of the crew didn't even know what we did. A lot of the crew didn't know that we had gotten these jobs 5 weeks before we started the show. So every script the crew saw, they're like, why are we taking so long with scripts? It's like, because we basically started working 5 weeks before we started shooting. So a lot of directors and crew, if we talk to them about it a little bit, they know a little bit about it, but they don't. Only the writers really know the whole story of like how we got to where we got to. And one of the reasons why we got to where we got to is because we wanted to open up the world for great directors like Alicia. Pick is the reason why she got the job writing on she got the job directing on our show, because it was an awesome short, and we're like, we got to give her a shot.
Yes. And it's crazy because I've talked to other showrunners who I'm like, hey, like, can you hire me? And they're like, well, we've really struggled getting new directors approved by the network, but if you want to shadow, or if you want to, like, it'll be easier to get you in the writer's room. And like, ultimately, it's just somebody believing you can do the job. And look, I did the job. And I think even just hearing this whole backstory, like, you would never be able to tell that you all just started working together on this show. Like, I just kind of came in and was like, oh wow, this is a well-oiled machine, like everybody's getting along. The scripts were solid. Like, I read my script and I was like, oh, this is so sweet. And I read some of the other scripts too, and I was like, oh yeah, like, this content makes sense, it's well written, it's giving us important themes, but like not in a heavy-handed way, and still, I think, fitting for a family drama. Yeah, I think I will say I felt very supported throughout the whole process, and I have been on other TV show sets, and I have been the only Black person on those entire sets. So it was just really refreshing to see a lot of people of color in positions of power, and also where it doesn't usually trickle down is like the actual crew, and there was people of color on the crew too. Because I've been on a lot of shows where Murdoch Mysteries, where the show's been on for 12 seasons and they just have the same people who have been doing the job for 12 years, and there was literally no people of color, and it was super isolating shadowing on that show. So all I'll say is I felt really blessed to have this be like my first TV experience, because it is overwhelming in the sense that there's so many people looking at you. But what's great about TV is that I don't always have to have the answers. Like, I have so much support, and of course I'm the director and bringing fresh eyes and vision, different perspective to the table. But it was always nice to like be around Murray and Anthony, and just, I mean, the whole team was really amazing. So yeah, I loved it. Can't wait till the next one, and I hope it lives up to this one.
Your episode's excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, like, it's always so sweet hearing about, like, a filmmaker that's actually supported on a set and stuff. And then also, of course, I'm just looking at, obviously, this Zoom window. It's like, this isn't a panel of diverse different film folks that we got together to speak from their isolated projects. You're all from one project, which is kind of incredible, right?
I think the fact that we've had that our entire room is BIPOC and we have BIPOC leadership, I think that speaks to, or that's largely the reason why we feel okay speaking about our experiences, because being able to look at our colleagues and seeing a room full of people of color and supporting each other and our experiences, I think that's what empowers us to speak. And because we can't be isolated, we can't be the one person who's chased out, Mm-hmm. And that's all on Anthony for making sure that this room was all BIPOC.
The argument could be made, you're making a story about a blended family, you need some white representation.
That came up.
We have producers.
It did. I mean, I'm being completely honest with you, because me, I'm gonna keep it 100, but it did come up, and I did consider for a while bringing in white writers, but then I was like, every single executive on the show is white, and I was like, I feel like we have that point of view covered. Honestly, I mean, that's kind of where it was, and I was just like, because actually one of them asked me, I was like, oh, we weren't sure if you're gonna hire a white writer. I was like, y'all got that. So I mean, also the thing is, every single one of us in the room has watched enough white people on TV to get a good sense of like how they are. Also, we have
you write white.
Yeah, I mean, we never had I mean, none of the white actors were like, I don't feel like this is authentic. No one came to us was like, what's going on here? Like that never happened. So I'm not.
But not
really
only
that worried about it, to be honest.
But not only watching white people on TV, also living in their world. Like, yeah.
It felt like when we were in our room, like we weren't living in that world, which was like it felt like our space, you know, and we were free to talk in a way, like to pitch our ideas and experiences, and there was a bridge that we didn't have to cross in explaining a lot of things and always being the one to explain experiences or explain what's going on in a story that we're pitching. There was stuff where we could pitch it, we could just go so much faster because we all just got it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, did you ever, did any of the writers, any of you guys, I know Anthony, you've had to have conversations with like executives who are like, I don't know if it was blatant or ignorant as what's a microaggression, or maybe it was as blatant and ignorant as that, but like, I don't know if the writers had to deal with that stuff too. Like, tell me.
I mean, I shared everything with the writers. The writers all know what I went through because that's the thing too. When you're even as a showrunner, you need sometimes you think to yourself, "Am I crazy? Like, what's going on here?" And I take it back to the writers, and they'd be like, "No, that's fucked up. That's not. You're not crazy. You're doing the right thing." So, they know everything I experienced. And there were things that popped up where I was like, "Oh, I think this is just a regular thing that everyone knows," and then find out that certain people didn't know it, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I think this is a story then, because I feel like we can meet somewhere in the middle if we tell this story, because it's something that I assumed everyone was aware of, but it's not. So then let's go there." So those conversations always turned into good content, I think, for the show. I think you'll see it on the show, which is great.
Right. Well, so like, let's like going back to the genesis of the show. Like, you're saying that this original show was pitched in 2016. I mean, and of course it had the kind of the context of what it was being created. I mean, the overhaul happened. Was it? Remind me, Anthony. Was it after like the kind of racial reckoning of the last summer? Was that, or were you already in the conversations? Like when Sharon Lewis said, "This is what's wrong with your show." What was the timing there?
That was like, I think it was August of 2020. So it was after all the George Floyd stuff. After everything changed for people who didn't realize that shit was actually happening. So
yeah,
I don't know how much it played into. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I don't know how much it played into the decision that they made. But I'm sure it had something to do with it. Once a lot of people kind of got their eyes open to.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering, like, if in another alternate universe, if that didn't happen, would the show have gone on the way it was originally planned? Like, would it have just gone to camera? Yeah.
I personally believe it would have moved forward. I can't tell you that it would have for sure, but I personally think it would. I personally think it would have, because there are a lot of shows that are happening now that are as tone deaf as that, and they make it through to TV all the time. They make it through to film all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There are no, I mean, just going to be real, there are no people of color who are in positions of power in the production company or the broadcaster. And I think the fact that those scripts got to where they were without anyone thinking that they were ridiculous is a testament to that. But at the same time, they did the very difficult thing of pivoting. Like, that's not an easy thing. It costs a lot of money to do what they did. Like, they decided to save the show rather than try to save themselves. Like, I think that's a huge reason. The fact that they were willing to do it is the reason I was willing to do it, because I kind of said to them, like, listen, if you're going to do this, it has to be this and this and this. And they were like, they didn't hesitate. They're like, let's go. And I was like, all right, cool. We have people who want to do the right thing. Marvel Media they did the right thing. BYU, they did the right thing. I think it's incredibly difficult what they did, but they went through it. It wasn't easy for any of us, but I think the fruits are in the labor. So.
And just to add on to that, to give you a sense of like what the timeline actually was, now that I'm hearing Anthony say, I didn't realize that all the stuff with Sharon and the pivot was made in August.
End of August.
So we started working the day after Labor Day on the scripts. for something that was supposed to go into production at the end of October.
Yeah.
So that's how fast we were working.
2.5 stories broken a day.
Yeah.
Which is not how it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, what we were doing is,
It's
it's usual for me because that's the only thing I'm used to. But apparently, that's not how television is normally made.
You were born in the fire. You were Bane from Dark Knight Rises.
Anthony, you got to do your Bane voice now. You got to do your Bane voice now.
I was born in the dark.
Oh my God.
Oh, Batman. Like that's Ian's experience. He was just kind of like, I guess this is what it is. No, like Ian now because of what he went through. Absolutely.
Well, now, did the filmmakers have the same pressure, or was it a little more easy going for them? Like they could just work on normal schedule. I mean, during the shoots.
I mean, we tried to make it as easy as possible for everyone else. We put the burden on ourselves as writers. I mean, you tell me, Alicia, how did you feel going into it?
You didn't know there was a rush in all that. Sorry.
Well, I didn't know there was a rush. I mean, I'm kind of with Ian where like I don't have anything to compare it to. So it seemed like a lot of content to get in a day, but only because like I'm used to shooting my own short films where I make up the schedule and I have a 10-page script that I shoot in 3 days. So it's completely different, obviously, when I'm doing a million setups and doing all these things. Whereas this just felt like really fast. But what was amazing about it was, again, having other opinions to be like, oh, we got it. And then also having the actors be so good that, they took direction really well and quickly. But yeah, at first I was like, wait a minute, I shot my short film in 3 days. You mean I have to shoot 12 pages in one day? Like, how does this work? But like, it works. So yeah, it was fun. I don't know. It was fun. It was like getting to work with 2 cameras. Like there was just a lot of things that I got to do for the first time and learn again with a supportive environment, because certainly I wasn't perfect, and it was just like nice to have people around to not be condescending but be helpful, which is a really difficult balance. But everybody on the team was just amazing. Like I've never said a bad thing about the experience, and it is because I've seen other shows and just been like, ugh, like I wouldn't have wanted this to be my thing. But yeah, I mean, it was just, what was the question? Sorry.
No, yeah, whether you felt the pressure that these other, if there was any of that.
You still feel the pressure, and especially like I'm young, like I feel like, when I first introduced myself to Devin, I was like, hi, like I'm Alicia, and she's like, oh, and what's your job? I just got the director.
Which one's Devin? Sorry.
She plays Victoria.
Okay.
Because I just look young. So I think like, yeah, sometimes, and that kind of happened to me a few times, like just checking, because there's a million people, obviously not everybody, and we're all wearing masks. That was a whole nother thing we haven't even talked about, meeting like 100 people. It might not be 100, I don't know how many people, but if I ever see any of those people, I probably won't recognize them. But I'm really glad they were all so supportive and expressive with their eyes, and I felt I still felt a connection with them. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to just be like having these opportunities now when I think I'm ready to have them, instead of when the industry has decided, oh, she's reached a certain age or she's done this and she's done that. There just seems to be, I personally have never heard of a man ever shadowing on a show, and every female director I know has done like years of shadowing before they got a job. And again, it was just nice to be able to have the opportunity to do it and like have those challenges of being like, oh my gosh, it's 2 cameras, it's 12 pages, and learning and growing with a good team. And let the networks listening know, like, we can do the job if you just let us do it in the same way that all the white guys did it. Like, it's, I don't know.
I mean, it's exactly. I mean, it's a resetting of like the paradigm and the mindset. I mean, there was more than one occasion where people would ask me who I was on the set, and I would tell them I was a writer, and you could like one person visibly started, and you could see it in their eyes that they were like, wait, this dude's the writer? Because they don't see that many writers of color. They don't understand that we could be the writers on a show like this. Yeah. It's just not done. So it's just what was done with this show is just not.
Anthony's already here.
normally
Why do
done.
they need more black people?
I remember I was in line for a coffee and someone came up and goes, "You must be hair and makeup." And I was like, why must I be hair and makeup?
Wait, on this set. So that could still happen on this production.
Early on,
Ignorant
especially.
people everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you too, like, I mean, just speaking to like what Alicia was just saying about people saying, "Oh, you're a director." Like even like Kelly Fife Marshall, she did her first half hour of this too, and she was on set maybe a couple weeks before you were, Alicia. And when somebody came up to her when she was doing her prep and was like, "Oh, so what are you doing on the show?" And she's like, "I'm directing." And then the woman burst into tears because she'd never seen like a black female, like she never worked with like a black female director, and she was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, that's wild. Like I was like, and I think Kelly even posted about it on her Facebook and Twitter, and I was just like, that's wild. Like that's but you know, it's that kind of show, and it's one of those things where it was like it was happening a lot on the show because of where the show came from. A lot of Frank's old crew were still part of the show because I didn't come on until after a lot of people were there. But one of the things we made sure that we did was at the very beginning, I said, "Hey, listen, diversity is important to me. Get as much as you can on your crews. Like if you can find people, please bring more diversity in because it's important to me." And as a showrunner saying that, people took it to heart and they made it happen. I think it didn't get to where I wanted it to get to, but I think they did. To have black set dressers come up to me and be like Obi came up to me, he was like, "Yo, I've been doing this 8 years and never been on a set with this many people of color." And I was like, "What?"
I think you can't look at remarks and like reactions in a vacuum. Like we are in an industry where it is unusual to see an all BIPOC room and to see this many writers of color. So people are reacting because they've been conditioned and like all of these other in the 99% of sets that are not like ours.
Anthony, you brought up the difficult thing. You brought up BYU, and I gotta address that. Like, so I guess it's like, okay, so I realized, okay, BYU TV is the television branch of Brigham Young University. Yeah, which is a Mormon college that have rules against acting on homosexuality on campus and such, right? Yeah. So yeah, what are your thoughts and feelings about like working with this?
Well, I'll tell. So from my experience, so I actually started working with them on another show that I'm working on called Overlord in the Underwoods. And the way that went down was I was initially worried about it because my daughter is queer. Like I have lots of family and friends who are LGBT. Like it's not okay with me that stance. So I was very worried, nervous about BYU TV being a part of Overlord in the Underwoods. I met with one of their executives, a guy named Jim Bell, who is one of the nicest, sweetest human beings in the world. He actually has family members who are also LGBT. So he breaks down that wall and those barriers very quickly. And I have other friends who are Mormons and they're all lovely people. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like, you realize BYU TV is not BYU, but the money is coming from there. So you're kind of like, you're not sure about this. But what made me okay with it is them saying, we're okay going to those places. We're not trying to take away any voices. You're the showrunner of the show. We want you to have the opportunity to bring in any queer characters you want or any of those things. Like they were okay with all that stuff for Overlord. So the reason I ended up doing Parker Anderson's is because Overlord was going really, really well, and it still is going really, really well. And we're gonna start shooting that one soon. But because it was going so well and Parker Anderson's wasn't, they asked me to take over that show because I already had a relationship with BYU and I had a relationship with Marvel Media. With Overlord, it's just a funny sci-fi show about an alien and a family. So there's no real grit, there's no real drama in it. It's just pure comedy. With Parker Anderson's, there's a real point of view that has to be spoken to, and there's especially with the Black point of view. And I'm very aware of Mormons and the history with Black people, and also Utah not having a lot of Black people. So it wasn't a surprise to me that the scripts were tone deaf because there just aren't a lot of Black people in Utah. There aren't a lot of Black people who work for BYU TV. I don't think I've met anyone Black who works for BYU TV.
Was Parker Anderson, originated at BYU, or was it originated with Marvel Media?
Originated with Marvel Media. They brought it to BYU.
Oh, okay.
and BYU picked it up as a family show that they were.
Right. Okay.
Actually, it didn't even originate. It originated at Chorus, and then Marvel Media bought it from Chorus, and then
Right.
Marvel Media brought it to BYU. There's like this show's been around the block. There's a long history we can get into with this show, but so when things started with Parker Anderson's, that's when things became. It became more difficult to get through because it was like there was a point of view that they didn't understand, but they were willing to listen. So it kind of took a little while. With the LGBTQ stuff, for me, like the way that I kind of like look at it is I'm using this platform to open the doors for as many people as possible. And that's kind of what I did in terms of like, there were gay people who are working on the show. Surprise, surprise, BYU. I don't think BYU is okay with it. They're not trying to stop any of that. They didn't engage in any practices where they were trying to stop anyone from getting jobs. So we were very open and very diverse on the set, not just with people of color, but people who were members of the LGBTQ community. So because of that, I was okay with it. And also because of how many doors I could open for as many people as possible, I was okay with moving forward in that. But it is something that I think about. It is something that it definitely weighs on me. And I can't say that it doesn't. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. But then you get to a place where you're like, you can either take this job and let a bunch of people into this system, or you can not take it and someone else is just going to give those jobs to other people who are not people you think are as deserving. So that's kind of where I stand with it. And like, they say BYU TV it's just a different group. The money does come from BYU, but the TV station is definitely, they have a lot of diverse characters on there. They have a lot of diverse, a lot of different shows, and they just kind of open up for they're trying to get to the world. They're not trying to just reach their group. They're trying to reach everybody. So I think they're doing a good job of trying to open that up.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that, or among the writers? Or
I mean, honestly, speak your truth, because for me, it definitely was. It took a while for me to be okay with it. And every once in a while, I kind of think to myself, I'm hoping that the shows that we're making are engaging in that change that we want to see in that group of people. So hopefully, with you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, can I talk about the meeting we had with those guys?
Yeah.
Is that so we had one call with the executives, the production executives at the network, and they were pretty frank about where they're coming from. They're a conservative leaning, family oriented TV network, and that's the programming they want to do. They're not trying to be Vice Media. They're not trying to be HBO in terms of like pushing the envelope in terms of social change. And they were honest, and they were pretty frank about that. And given that's their point of view and where they're coming from, I think a lot of the things we ended up getting to talk about within the show were way beyond what they stated was their comfort zone. So, I think we were able to do what Anthony said, like open up a space for discourse and a space for them to kind of think about what they could potentially put on their airwaves. And I think my hope would be that for the next season of the show, that kind of space opens up even more. And they're in a place that's even more open or more broad than where they thought the network could be potentially.
Yeah, I think if our aim is to use our talents to affect change, to make people laugh, but also to affect change. I mean, it's hard to do that when you close the conversation. So like working with people whose some of their opinions you don't necessarily agree with, or some of their policies, well, I could shut down and stop that conversation. And in which case, it's very hard to tell stories that maybe they're less familiar with, and to expose different points of view. Or we could go ahead and we could say, let's make this a conversation, and let's show you what the world looks like to us.
As they're saying, I think we all kind of went in knowing more or less what constraints or whatever that we would be up against. And especially kind of seeing where the script started, it was like, at least for me, it was like, at the very least, if we can just go in with the idea of like, first do no harm, and then from there, whatever we can do to just kind of sneak any learning in, then that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We snuck a lot of learning
in. Well, I mean, are you? And don't worry if you can't be specific about this, but when you say like you have an idea, you like, so there was things that they didn't want to get into. Are you able to let me know like what were some of those boundaries like that?
But there's a whole episode where there was profiling and there was microaggression of the story. Like from the beginning, they were like, "This is going to be too not what was the word they said? Too polarizing for our network." Like, I don't think so. And then we.
Is that after they read the script for that, or the pitch for that, or after they actually saw the episode?
At every single moment of the process, they said it was
the pitch, the outline, the first draft, the second draft, the third draft, the production draft, the edits.
The first time,
the whole way through.
The first time that they said, "Oh, this is great," was after watching the first cut of the episode. And I actually ended up directing. It's an episode that Ian wrote and I directed, and. And even all throughout shooting, they were like, "That's too far. That's too far. That's too far." And I was like, "Let me work." And then at the end of it, I showed it to them, and they're like, "Oh, this is gonna change so many hearts." And I was like,
"You guys must have been so tired. Did you just take like the longest nap after?"
I personally believe they were very naive to do this show without people of color in their company. I think. That's personally what I thought. Mm-hmm. You are taking a black man and a white woman, and you're saying, "Let's just show how happy everything is." You're taking the two most polarizing figures in American history. You're throwing them in a house in Chicago with kids that don't belong to each other. Dead black, divorced white dad, and you're going, "Look at how happy we can be." I was like, first of all, please understand, that's just a naive point of view. You can't just do that and expect it to be cool. So one of the things that I was adamant about was getting rid of that episode about the unicorn, which it took me a while to get them to get off that unicorn. And then it and also literally they write it in. And then also the thing was like you need an episode that tackles profiling and tackles the race issue where you have a black man and a white woman, they're together, and there's a black man with a white son. Now in this episode, there's profiling that happens, and I mean, I'll just say I'll give you the kind of quick rundown, but basically what happens is these people at the store, they profile, they get in trouble, security guard has to come, and it's all because of something that the white son did. And it leads to a point where this black dad who was given the talk to his kids numerous times now has to give the talk to his 8-year-old white son. And so that's something that I think you can't do in other shows that we can do. And I feel like it's not just something we might want to do, it's something we have to do. And so pushing that, I think, was something that took a while. They were not comfortable with it. I kept pushing it to the point where we got it made and we got it done. And in the end, they're very happy with it. So, and there are a bunch of other things like that. Like, I feel like, I mean, even like, that's one big thing, but even like littler things, like, I don't know how many Filipino love interests we have for 13-year-old kids out there, but like Amanda was like, no, we got to find a Filipino kid to be the love interest for this episode. And we found a great kid in Peyton Garcia to become that friend. It's just little things like that. Like, I think like, there was a lot of pushing, a lot of opening minds, and a lot of like using this show to wedge as many moments that could lead to change as possible into this one episode. And we know, I feel like watching all the episodes, I feel like we did a really good job of like hitting some important points.
Well, but I guess the challenge is though, like, do you have any episodes with queer characters in the show? And
we don't have any episodes where someone comes out. We have episodes with queer actors, but I don't think I don't know if we have any episodes where someone we haven't like made anyone gay or queer or lesbian. We haven't identified anyone that is that, but we have a lot of actors and characters. I mean, any of them can be gay or lesbian, or we just don't get into that.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things that they are going to do, hopefully soon where they start breaking down those walls a little bit on their network. But for me, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, I mean, I don't feel like I need to see episodes where people are coming out all the time, but I do feel I need to see episodes where there are queer characters that are just being who they are in worlds. And I mean, if you ask me, I think more than a few of these characters are probably queer, but we just don't get into it.
I mean, I guess I just want to reiterate again. I mean, what Anthony was able to do in terms of, taking leadership of a show that was written from, or was supposed to be written from the point of view of a BIPOC or a blended family that had no significant leadership or senior writers having input into the storylines, and being able to take that over and completely refashion the writer's room within the space of a couple of weeks to rewrite essentially an entire season, like 20 episodes worth of television. And I mean, from first day of the writer's room to the first table reads was, I think, like 4 or 5 weeks. And within a couple of weeks after that, we were shooting like the first episodes. And for us to be able to turn that around with a 6-person writing room, including the showrunner, and it be an all BIPOC room is monumental. Like there's only one other show I know of that's an all BIPOC room, and that's The Porter, and that happened this year as well. So I mean, this is the vanguard of like major change in this industry, and there are a lot of people who are still, Alicia still has to fight the battle to convince people that she can direct television when she literally just did it. And people still kind of give you the side eye when you tell them you've been in one room or 1.5 writers' rooms and you wrote 4 scripts. Like, that never happens. Like, a brand new writer to be able to write 4 scripts on the first show he's on does not happen. But it can happen when you have people who are willing to kind of kick down doors and kind of push the envelope. And that's what happens when you let BIPOC people be creative and speak their truth and put their vision for how they want to see the world and how they view art out in the world.
And just for added context.
It's just sea chain here. So go ahead.
For added context to what Ian just said, when I was first brought into the room, I was given half a script.
Oh.
And then ended up with 4 at the end after Anthony took over.
I think that so much of that kicking down doors, like Ian was saying, and everything, like, for that to happen, we need to have BIPOC leadership, and we have to have BIPOC artists that are not just working, but are being elevated, or who are allowed, not being elevated because that makes them inactive, but who are allowed to rise higher in the industry and into positions of power, and are given, the same consideration and the same kind of chance that other writers are given to advance themselves. Because until we are in positions of power, like Anthony has been, this industry is not going to change.
Yeah, and it's all about, like, what is that pipeline to be able to bring up the next generation of writers, directors, producers, whatever it is. I'm not really sure to what extent I'm allowed to really get into this, but you know what? Here we are.
Did you not see Anthony just spilling everything else? Come on.
When it came to the directors of color, especially the women that we had on our show, originally they wanted them to just come in and shadow.
Wait. And like which directors to come in and shadow? Like Sharon Lewis and stuff, or?
Like Alicia, Kelly.
Oh, right.
They didn't want to give them a chance to like direct their episodes, which,
right.
I think by all accounts would have been a huge mistake because they all did a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a situation where it was a combination of COVID, where you weren't allowed to be a mentee on these things anymore, and a combination of, the previous regime had already scared off most of the Black directors. They want to be a part of this. And I was like, okay, opportunity then. Who's going to step into this space? And it was like, they were like, oh, we'll just have them mentor. I was like, let them, it wasn't just me. I wasn't the only person that was like, let them do it. There were members of the of Marvel Media who were fighting as well to let Kelly and Alicia have their episodes. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was, opportunity, and they took it and ran with it. They were excellent, both Alicia and Kelly. So
I was just going to say, and even the way that opportunity came to Kelly is like Murray and I both are graduates from the CFC, and Kelly directed our project shorts while we were there, and we forwarded her name to Anthony. That's not normally the way directors get on the radar of production companies and showrunners. Like normally nobody's looking to the junior writers in the room for director suggestions, but that's the way Anthony runs his room, that he's looking for ideas and suggestions from everybody. And you never know where the opportunity or the space to create an opportunity is going to come from. And here we are. Kelly gets to direct her first episode, and so does Alicia.
I can't tell you what I got that from watching Greg Daniels work on The Office, because he would ask everybody everything all the time. He would take advice from he would be in an edit room working on something late into the night, and then he'd ask a janitor who came by to clean the garbage, like, hey, look at this scene for me and tell me what you think. Like he doesn't. I watched him do that, and I was like, it doesn't make sense to not take as much information and then go with it.
Absolutely, but that's the thing. I think a lot of times this industry, I'm new in it, so I'm still kind of learning kind of the mores and the kind of the norms of it. But I get the sense that there is this kind of hierarchical, stay in your lane until it's your time, kind of mindset to how it's run. And I think, and that's not the way the world works now. That's not the way the economy works. And I think for people who are like into kind of thinking in a more flat world kind of mindset and a mind space, those are the people that are kind of pushing culture forward and pushing new ideas forward. So, that's why this show's so different, and that's why it's that's why I think we're all kind of sitting here talking about it.